I'm pretty excited. Today, my new Rocky Talkie GMRS radio arrived. Ordered this last week right after they announced that they were available. And while I have known that these were in the works for quite some time, I didn't really know any of the specs or details because Rocky Talkie didn't trust me with that information. We had been talking about a year ago, a year and a half ago now, about potentially taking some of the prototype radios on a really cool trip to Christmas Island. And because of everything going on in the world, that trip got canceled, and Rocky Talkie and I just kind of hadn't talked about it since. But you know how much I like the original Rocky Talkie. And so when I got the email that the GMRS version was available, I had to get it. So I bought two. You probably already saw my unboxing video. If not, humor me. But what you get in the box is the radio, the lanyard, an additional antenna. This is pretty cool, and I'll explain what this does in a minute. A charging cable, a power port, and the quick start guide. Now, there are a few things that are important to note about the quick start guide and about the radio in general. So the first question that I wanted to know is, will my old Rocky Talkie talk to my new Rocky Talkie? The short answer is yes. Now, I'm a little confused on this myself because if you go through the different FCC charts for FRS versus GMRS, there is a discrepancy in bandwidth. And bandwidth is really an alternative to frequency in the way that we measure radio transmissions. Frequency is the number of cycles per second or minute, depending on how you want to divide it out, but it's also known as hertz. Then you have bandwidth, and bandwidth is the volume or the total amount of space that radio wave is allowed to take up in the airways to send its information. Modern police radios and the 800 megahertz frequencies are trying to get narrower and narrower and narrower. The narrower your bandwidth, the more opportunity you have to add additional channels. They're even trying this in the marine band channels. They're rebranding like 22 Alpha as 1022. Makes no sense to me, but in their eyes, they're going to make it narrow to fit more things in. Think of it as a parking space, okay? A parking space is designed to fit the average car. It does not fit my truck, but it also is way too big for a motorcycle. But the narrower you make your parking spaces, the more cars you can fit in there. That's what they're trying to do with channels. So FRS has very narrow parking spaces. GMRS has larger parking spaces. At least that's how it's been historically. However, in my quick test so far, I have determined that these two radios do indeed talk to each other. And that's pretty cool. But there is something to pay attention to. When you unlock your radio, and I hope that flicker is not annoying you as much as it's annoying me, but when you unlock your radio, you have 22 channels. The 22 channels here correspond to the first, sorry, battery's a little dead on this guy, the first 22 channels here. They are the same as far as the frequency goes. In my early tests, I've proven that these two radios can talk to each other on the first 22 channels of this radio. Now, this is a fun system. Rocky Talkie made the world a very simple place by giving us 128 channels that are pre-programmed, some with privacy tones and some without. The first 22 from the factory do not have privacy tones, meaning if this CT1 here were 0, as it is here on channel 20, then out of the factory box, if you haven't manipulated this at all, channel 20 here is channel 20 here. Channel 14 is channel 14. But let's say you're like me and you've started messing with the buttons. On the side here, it says CT. Press and hold, and it gives you a CT number. So far, the numbers are the same on these two radios. To get the two to talk together, match the channel and then the CT. That's it. Once you do those two things, these two, in my experience, will start talking to each other. So that's pretty cool. Now, what are the major differences between these? Well, this is an FRS radio. It requires no license at all. This is a GMRS radio, and this does require a license, but no test. You go to the FCC website, you fill out some information, you pay your money, you take your prize. Functionally, they are both radios. They both talk on the same channels. So why does one need a license and one does not? It has to do with the rated power output and the ability to put on a different antenna. Let's take a look at this logically. If you have a bunch of people running around with no licenses, uncontrolled, and you've got thousands of people in a city using these, the only way to make sure that the airwaves aren't completely clogged is to limit how far these can transmit. If up to 2 watts, which is what these are limited to as an FRS radio, some channels are half a watt, but if these are limited to 2 watts, then rule of thumb is maybe 2 miles. I know they tout 28 miles, but that's mountain peak to mountain peak. Let's be real. 5 watts is 2.5 times greater distance. It's a great thing if you need it, but you don't always need it. GMRS also has the ability to have a removable antenna. And this is pretty cool. You can take this, get a male SMA adapter, and plug it onto a rooftop antenna. Or you can put the little stubby antenna on that like this guy has. And then it's just a little bit less obtrusive. You cannot legally take the antenna off the old Rocky Talkie radio, or else you get a slap on the wrist. I don't know. Never had it happen. But if you're going to be a Boy Scout, leave the antenna on. I may or may not be able to confirm that the antennas are the same between the radios and one might be glued on. Don't do it though. One thing that I do really like about this antenna though is, unlike even a Motorola antenna, like off my APX, okay, check this out. This is pretty cool. This tells me that Rocky Talkie is really thinking. See this O-ring right here? I'm sure, look at it, there we go. That work? No, all right, I quit. Okay, this antenna has an O-ring around the edge. Even this Motorola does not. Okay, no O-ring, O-ring. Rocky Talkie likes to advertise these as adventure radios. I mean, they even put on the back here, push your limits. I like that. But one of the ways that they can increase their waterproof capabilities is by having an O-ring around the SMA connector at the base of the antenna to keep water from going in just a little bit more securely. That's pretty neat. You know, some of the other differences here are preference. So the original Rocky Talkie has a really cool carabiner on the back. This one does not, but it does have a belt clip, and the belt clip also clips to a harness or anything else. It's a very, very robust belt clip, very secure, and I like it. That's a plus. Rocky Talkie also, on their original radio, masked the idea that there was a microphone port on there. And this takes the Kenwood style 2-pin microphone. The new Rocky Talkie takes the M3 microphone port. Now, unfortunately, I don't have anything that runs on the M3 microphone connection, so I can't tell you if it works or how it works. But I'm sure I will in the next couple of weeks. Whenever I get something like this, curiosity kind of takes over. And I have an unquenchable thirst for taking it apart. And of course I have the wrong bit. So there's a reason why I can't have nice things for very long. And that's because I really like taking things apart to see how they work. Now this radio, this is the original again. When you take it out of its sleeve, you can take the battery out pretty easily. As you can tell, this one's all crusty because it went through a hurricane with me. but you can take the battery out and you can charge it apart from the radio. I'm not so sure you can do that with this, but let's find out. So we're gonna go here to the trusty kit and start pulling things apart. The battery clip is really nice. I do like that the more I look at it. The Rocky Talkie does seem to have a feature that I haven't quite figured out how to use because the manual is not the clearest, but it says A and B here by the push to talk. And my suspicion is that just as it says here, it allows you to basically have 2 channels programmed for it and switch back and forth, but single press to enable transmission on B for 10 seconds. It doesn't tell me how to transmit on A. So I don't know. Maybe you tap it once and it stays open for 10 seconds. I could be, but let's keep taking this thing apart. So I took the belt clip off. There's a hidden screw underneath the belt clip. And let's see here. It feels like these screws might be glued in a little bit with maybe some sort of sealing compound. I'm sure I'm destroying the waterproof capabilities of this, but you know what? It's okay. We're having fun. We're taking things apart, just like everything else in my dad's garage. Man, my parents had a lot more grace than I do. Mom likes to say that my favorite phrase when I grew up was, "Mom, you're lucky you gave it to me right before it broke." When I originally opened up this box, I thought that this outer sleeve was just like the original Rocky Talkie and a peelable sleeve, but it's not. This is actually an overmolded bump edge, unlike this, which is a flimsy sleeve. And yes, I do really like this still. Okay, so inside they have a very simple model description of RT-5W, meaning Rocky Talkie 5 watt. 7.4 volts. The batteries are different. Check this out. The new battery is considerably thicker, and I'm imagining you can still buy additional batteries somewhere for these, or rather from Rocky Talkie. But I don't think these have an onboard charge circuit like these do. So that's interesting. You can't have these hanging around, but this is a much larger battery. This is 1800 milliamp hours, and this is 1550. So honestly, not that much bigger. But let's keep going. Do you ever get that impression that you shouldn't be taking something apart until you've at least broken it once? Nah, me neither. Okay, so right here we're taking off the new belt clip or lanyard hook. I think this goes here with that, and that's how you're going to attach the lanyard in the future. It is nice. I do like that it's removable too. I'm guessing that because there's this rubber O-ring here, that even if you remove that clip and you can see through there, that's now an opening. I'm guessing that still won't let water in. Gotta upsize our screw. Now using a Phillips number 1, whereas we had been using a Phillips 0 on a lot of the other screws. My suspicion is I'm going to need my fancy SMA antenna removal tool to get this out of the housing. It's a very common way of fastening radios into these things. And yeah, see right there? That takes a special wrench. You can get them on eBay and Amazon and whatnot, but hang tight, I'm gonna go get mine. All right, I found my wrench. It's a T-wrench with nodes that match that nut. This one is the Motorola tool, and believe it or not, it actually does make a difference to use the proper Motorola version rather than what I got off of eBay, I think it was. The Motorola version is more robust, it's more exacting here. I don't know if you can see that, but they're not just cut, they're actually round. And that takes a lot of machining, so that's pretty neat. All right, so this is out, that's out. And it's not wanting to go anywhere. There we go. Ooh. You know when you pull something and all of a sudden it like goes doing? That always makes my blood run cold for a moment. Okay, this is interesting. I don't know if you remember when I took apart the original Rocky Talkie, but there is a bit more going on here than that. Okay, so this is your charger. This is your remote speaker mic pad on the inside. Your speaker is now fully sealed into the housing. Same with the microphone. This is a rubber mastic compound. It's like a, I don't know, some sort of silicon. But it is interesting because if you look down there, it almost looks like the speaker is completely open to the elements, but it might not be. You do have a lot more options on the LCD screen than on the old one. And then here are your pressure points for your push to talk and your side buttons. The only failure I've ever had in a Rocky Talkie is because I submerged it for a very long time in very nasty water, and one of these push to talk buttons got corroded underneath. And that's not bad. You know, it's really easy to say, hey, you know what? A nice Motorola is really a much better radio than a Rocky Talkie. And I'm not going to argue that. But for the money, the cost of one of these Motorola batteries is the same as a Rocky Talkie. I mean, that makes me a lot more comfortable taking a Rocky Talkie than this. Let's see here. I don't really see too much else that we can take apart here without making bigger problems. I still actually want to use these radios. But it looks like the way that this board is mated to this magnesium or aluminum chassis is for heat dissipation. There's no gap at all, and I'm guessing that if we took this off, we'd have some sort of heat paste. Am I seeing that right? I feel like there's something weird in there and I can't figure it out. And I can't even figure out what makes it weird because I can't wrap my head around it. Just the feeling that something looks weird. But this is an impressive little radio. Pull the ribbon out. I'm guessing that this, oh, look at that. Okay. So I'm guessing if you had to file a warranty claim on this, they are repairable. They're not just throwaway. That's really nice. In a world of total throwaway junk, having something that is somewhat repairable is nice. I like that. All right, let's see if we can get this thing back together with my over-caffeinated fingers. Yes. It's always a good idea to use metal tools to connect delicate electronics that require shielding and insulation. For those of you who thought I was serious, you need to pick another channel. Okay, so we've got the wires back together. I'm gonna put the clamshell back in. Remember to put the antenna in first. Slip that together. Don't remember what screw went where, so we're just gonna put the short ones in this end and the long ones in this end and hope we were right. Am I missing anything? 1, 2, 3, 4. Ah, yes. Okay. Here we go. All right, so we're putting this guy back together. And, you know, I've waited for this radio for a long time. When I put out my first Rocky Talkie video, they did reach out to me and they said, thanks for the video. And that was really cool of them. I did really appreciate them doing that. I was really hoping to get to test this radio overseas somewhere amazing. I've taken these radios all over the place. I've taken them to Christmas Island, you know, 1,300 miles south of Hawaii in the middle of nowhere. I've taken them to Indonesia. I've taken them to the South Pacific. I mean, they've really been all over the place with me. And I take them because if they get confiscated by customs, if they get destroyed, if anything goes wrong, it's not a big deal. But I also don't want to bring absolute junk with me. You know, anything you bring on a trip costs, whether it's time, money, or weight. And so bringing heavy radios does cost something. So even though these aren't the heaviest radios in the world, they do weigh something. And so that is a calculation that has to come into play when I'm deciding what to bring on a trip. But I do really enjoy taking Rocky Talkies because I can hand them to my kids, I can hand them to my in-laws, hand them to my wife, and I don't have to worry about it ruining a relationship by handing off something expensive that my kids are going to dunk in the ocean. It's just not worth it. I will say that there is a different feel to this radio. The buttons here are a silicon variant, whereas these are hard plastic. Yeah, these are silicon, but the push to talk here is hard plastic, and I'm sure it has a silicon diaphragm. This one is all silicon. And I'm not saying it's bad. I think it might be good, but it just feels different. It's not what I was expecting. And sometimes it just takes me a little while to get used to things. Okay, so I'm gonna make sure that this orange seal here is good. That's tight. Go run one more time around these, make sure they're torqued down German tight, you know, Putin tight. Put the other bit back together, and we are going to hope and pray that it works again. So as I said, I did look up, and this remote speaker mic connection is called the M3. I believe that M usually designates Motorola on these, but I don't know what version of Motorola that would be. I haven't seen one with this configuration lately, but as soon as I do, I'll try and acquire one and put a video online for you guys. I did really like that they had the Kenwood connection on it because my flying helmet has a Kenwood port, but it does not have this Motorola M3 as an option for that port. So now I have to make a new headset. Not the end of the world, or a headset cable rather, but it's just something else to do. All right. Huh, it works. Go figure. Okay. All things considered, guys, I'm very excited about the new radio. They do talk to each other as long as you match the CT tones. If you go into the manual, it does explain a little bit about what they call privacy code, how to set the privacy code. Remember, privacy code is nothing more than fake privacy because it keeps you from hearing others, not others from hearing you. Check out my other video if you want to learn more about that. In summary, I am excited about this. I think it's a great radio. I do like that it has weather band as a option here. I'm guessing you press and hold that. Yep, there we go. And that's pretty cool because when you're out in the middle of nowhere, it's kind of nice to have. One thing that I do find interesting though is that weather band is VHF and GMRS and FRS are UHF. So this circuit board here has the opportunity to receive VHF, and I'm wondering if it can be jailbroken to transmit. Might be above my pay grade, but we'll find out. Well, that's it for today. I hope you enjoyed the teardown. I hope you're as impressed with these as I am. I think that Rocky Talkie has done a really good job of entering the GMRS world. I'm excited to see these pop out in the world, and I'm gonna put it through its paces, and I have every confidence in the world that this thing is going to hold up to everything that the old radio did and more. I'm gonna try and put it through everything that I put these through except the Hurricane. That one was, I'm okay missing that one. Well, I'll try and do some range tests for you guys later on, but I just kind of wanted you to see what was in the box, what comes with it, why it's different, and confirm that yes, these two radios do talk to each other. Thanks for watching. That's all I've got for you today. Take care and go have an adventure.